Hi there, this is Jen, and thanks for joining me today. Today I am creating a mixed media floral card using this Indigo Blu stamp, and the stamp is called Peony Posey. And since it is a bigger stamp and I'm kind of putting it off the side of the card, I needed to use a bigger platform, so I'm using my Tim Holtz stamping platform instead of the one that I usually use. So I'm just going to go ahead and prepare it with my embossing bag, because I will be embossing in gold. And so I'm just going to go ahead and line up my stamp and then get my Versamark embossing ink and ink up that red rubber stamp. And I've had this stamp, I think, for a couple of years, but it is still available at Joanns, online only. So if you're interested, I just put Joanns in the description in case you're interested in purchasing it. You might be able to find it other places, but it's a really super detailed stamp. So I do have to ink it up about 3 times to make sure that I have all of the little details of the stamp. And then once I have finished stamping it up on the left hand side, I just wanted like a little sliver with kind of the little branches or little swirly things, I don't know what they are, that are showing on the stamp. And so I go ahead and stamp just that small portion on the right hand side of the card. And then once I have that done, I'm going to take my gold embossing powder and spread that all over the stamped image, and I will go ahead and heat that up with my heat tool. I really love the stamp. It is super detailed though, so for me it's so hard to color, especially with my preferred method of coloring, which is watercolor, and especially embossed, it's so hard. So I didn't want to do that, and so basically for this card my idea was I wanted to use stencils and my powders, and I knew I wanted to use the stamp, but other than that I wasn't really sure what exactly I wanted to do. And so a lot of the image gets hidden underneath the layers that I put on it, but I love the way that the gold embossing details kind of peek out. So next I'm going to go ahead and take this Prima paper paste, and I'm using this Tim Holtz stencil. This stencil actually I had a really hard time finding the name of it, but it did come in a stamp and stencil set that I got from Joanns probably a few years ago. The closest I could find, I think it's called Blossom, but I couldn't find it anywhere except for eBay, so it must not be available any longer. But it's a really cool stamp set because it has a different stencil on the top and the bottom. So I'm just going to go ahead and take that paste and spread it on the card where I want it. And then I do end up taking my heat tool to dry that so I didn't have to wait. And then once I do that, I'm going to take a combination of Lindy's magical shakers, which are some of my favorite shakers, and I'm using gluten tag teal. I always say gluten, it's not gluten, it's gluten tag teal, time travel teal, and magnolia magenta gold. So I combine the gluten tag teal and the time travel teal colors together in one area. I kind of sprinkle it around the card, and then I just use the magnolia magenta gold on its own. I just wanted to show some close-ups because these are, like their name says, they're so magical. Like a lot of powders, if you have them, they'll do the same thing. Some powders have some of that gold mixture in, or other colors that burst out, and some don't have as much of that, and some have kind of that shimmer and some don't. Anyhow, I think they're all great. I just love the powders and the sprays. They're some of my favorite things to use on cards, just because I just think they're so pretty. And of course I think that goes along with me and what I like to do, which is watercolor. And so water and color, there it is. But I'm just going to go ahead and sprinkle that on and spray with water to activate it. And as you can see, it's just I don't know, it's just one of those things, I just love it so much. And I just think the colors are so beautiful, and you can see kind of the gold embossing powder popping up underneath. And then also I love the way that the color gets kind of trapped on the textured stencil area as well. And so I just wanted to give a close-up of the colors so you can see it really how vibrant and pretty they are. And then I'm just going to keep adding some color and using my paintbrush to move a little bit of that around and mix a little bit of those colors together. And then I'll go ahead and put some more of the teal colors on the bottom. There's that little white space, and I'll go ahead and spray that and work that through. I dried this, I let it air dry actually. I stepped away for a while and let that air dry, and then I got out this is a Stampers Anonymous set. And it's called Flower Garden. There are matching dies as well that are called Flower Garden. This is a really nice set. I've been pulling out some of the supplies that I haven't used before, and so this is one of them that I had purchased a while back and have never used. But it has a lot of nice floral images along with the stems, so it's super cool to kind of combine all those different. I just used one flower on this card, but it's a really nice set. It is a little bit more pricey, which I don't usually kind of buy those because of that, but I think I got it on Amazon, so it wasn't too bad. So for this, I'm learning a lot more about watercolor now, and so one of the things that they teach is that you start with your lightest color and then build up, and then go darker as you build up your color or layer your colors. And so the base layer that I put down was the N75 Tombow marker, and that is going to serve kind of as my highlight. And so that's what I've been trying to do. I've been trying to put my lightest color down because that is the color that will peek through and serve as a highlight on your image. And then the other two markers that I'm using are 526 and 528. And so I go ahead and put the 526 in just little areas. This is not a huge stamp, so you do not need a lot of the marker color to be able to spread. And so I just put that in areas around mainly the inside of the flower or where there's creases in the flower, just to be able to kind of spread that color out. And then the darkest color I take and try and put in the areas where there would be a shadow. And this is something that I'm not particularly confident in doing. And so I just kind of wing it. A lot of times I just try and put the colors where I think they look good or where I think there might be an area that is darker than the others. But I am still definitely practicing it. And so I just try and make it look pretty. At least pretty according to my eye, and so that's kind of how I'm doing it. For this, I forgot to mention as well that on the panel of the card base, no, the card panel, on the card panel where I put the magical shakers, I used an Arteza watercolor paper for that. And for this coloring, I'm using a Bristol smooth cardstock. It makes a huge difference with these markers and any really brush markers or watercolor markers, what kind of paper you use. I remember starting out when I had my Zig markers and using them for the first time. I wasn't using the right paper, and I just remember being so frustrated because I remember watching videos of people spreading the color, and it spread like so nice and easy. But it really does make a huge difference in the type of paper you're using. I prefer Bristol Smooth Cardstock for very light watercoloring. I definitely wouldn't use it for traditional watercoloring, but it works so well for the markers and things like that, where you're not going to be using a ton of water. And I just really love it. As well, I am using a number 4 round watercolor brush. And as always, I will have the links to all the products I used in the description below. There are some items that either are very hard to find or no longer available, and I do apologize for that. But I've had a lot of fun kind of going through my supplies that I've purchased and have never used or don't use very often. And so kind of the danger in that is that it might not be available, but maybe you have it in your stash and you've purchased it previously as well. And so I'm just going to finish up coloring this flower, and then I will take the matching die and cut that out. And the matching dies for this set cuts very close to the line. It does not really leave the white border, which I like, especially for these florals. And I also went ahead and colored and stamped and colored up a stem, and I cut that out. And then I found this sentiment set from Technique Tuesday that I'm going to use a sentiment from that, which is old and no longer available. And then for when I use watercolor or water on panels, I like to use a piece of double-sided adhesive most times to adhere it. And so I am using this double-sided adhesive from scrapbook.com, which is super easy to adhere and it's strong. And to flatten the panel a little bit because it was slightly warped because of the water, I put it in between two pieces of paper and ran it through my Big Shot several times, and that helped a great deal in helping to flatten that paper out. And then I'm going to take my red fine line glue and adhere that stem piece. And then for the flower, I wanted it kind of dimensional, and so I'm just taking that little flower tool and kind of helping it to pop up a little bit. And then I'll take my glue again and just glue the center portion of that flower. And then I take some round foam dots and put those underneath 4 corners of the flower just to make sure that they stay popped up, and also to keep them popped up in case I do end up mailing this. And then I'm going to go ahead and take my sentiment and the word "you" from a Pink Fresh Studios die set. This stamp for this sentiment is called Label Maker. It's by Technique Tuesday, and that is discontinued. It's an older stamp set, and I do not remember what it says. It says, "Thank you for being in my life." That's what it says. And I really like the border around it, and so I went ahead and embossed that in gold. I added some foam behind that main sentiment strip, and then I also did add some tiny little foam strips behind the word "you." And to finish up the card, I used some flat gold sequins from Michaels, and I also added some white Nuvo crystal drops, and that is it. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to spend with me. If you liked this video or found it informative, please go ahead and give me a thumbs up. I hope you enjoyed. This is probably one of the favorite cards that I've made. Please let me know what you think below. And until next time, have a great day, and I'll catch you later.